Madame Grace Fiery sat behind her heavy mahogany desk, staring at 3 folders in front of her. She was a woman who had built an empire from nothing, but her biggest worry was not business. It was her only son, Nathan. Nathan had just returned from studying abroad. He was handsome, smart, and kind, but his mother knew the real world could be cruel. She knew that money had a bad habit of attracting people who loved luxury more than truth. She called Nathan into her office. "My son," Madame Grace began, her voice soft but firm. "You are ready to settle down. I have spent months looking at the women in our company, and I have found 3 who stand out. They are smart, beautiful, and successful. But I need to know which one has a heart of gold." Nathan smiled at his mother, taking a seat opposite her. "Mother, you know I respect your wisdom, but I do not want a woman who smiles at me just because of the family name. If they know I am your son, they will put on a show." Madame Grace raised an eyebrow. "So, what do you suggest?" Nathan leaned forward, his eyes bright with a sudden idea. "Do not tell them who I am. Tell them you are sending a company driver to pick them up for a special dinner with you. I will be that driver." Madame Grace gasped softly, but then a slow smile spread across her face. It was a risky plan, but it was brilliant. A person's true character always showed in how they treated those they thought were beneath them. The next morning, Madame Grace called the 3 women to her office one by one. First was Martha, a top manager who was always dressed in high fashion and walked with her head held high. Second was Alice, a sharp accountant who knew how to speak with great charm. Third was Ruth, a quiet supervisor from the warehouse who rarely spoke unless spoken to, but worked harder than anyone else. Madame Grace gave each of them the same message. "I am holding an exclusive private dinner tonight. I want to get to know you better. I am sending my personal driver to fetch you from your home. Please be ready by 7. All 3 women accepted the invitation with excitement, each believing this was their big chance to get closer to the famous Madame Grace and her wealthy family. None of them knew that the young man who would pull up to their gates in a simple white uniform was not just a driver, but the very heir they hoped to impress. As the sun began to set, Nathan adjusted his driver's cap in the mirror of an old, basic sedan. He took a deep breath, turned the key in the ignition, and drove out of the estate. The test had officially begun. Nathan adjusted his driver's cap and pulled the basic sedan up to the gate of the first house. Alice stepped out of her front door, looking like a queen in a sparkling red dress. She walked toward the car with quick, proud steps, holding her phone to her ear. Nathan quickly got out to open the back door for her, smiling politely. "Good evening, ma'am," Nathan said kindly. Alice did not even look at his face. She tossed her heavy designer handbag onto the seat, almost hitting Nathan's hand, and slid inside. "Be careful with that bag. It costs more than your monthly pay," she snapped into her phone, continuing her loud phone call without another word to him. She did not say thank you, nor did she acknowledge his greeting. As Nathan closed the door and began to drive, she complained loudly to her friend about the small car and the slow traffic, treating Nathan as if he were completely invisible. Next, Nathan drove to pick up Ruth. Ruth was sitting on her porch, dressed in a beautiful blue gown. When the car stopped, she walked over with a sweet smile on her face. But the moment she opened the door and saw the plain interior of the vehicle, her smile disappeared into a frown. "Is this the best car Madame Grace could send?" Ruth asked, her voice sharp and disappointed. "I am a senior manager in the finance department. This car is dusty."
"I'm sorry, Mom.
"I cleaned it as best as I could," Nathan replied calmly, keeping his eyes on the road. Ruth rolled her eyes and sighed heavily. "Just drive carefully and don't make me late. And turn up the air conditioner. It is far too warm here." She spent the rest of the ride checking her reflection in her mirror, ignoring Nathan entirely except to bark orders about avoiding potholes. Finally, they arrived at Martha's home. Martha came out wearing a simple, neat dress. As soon as she saw the car stop, She hurried over with a warm, gentle smile. Before Nathan could even step out to open the door, she opened it herself. "Good evening," Martha said softly, looking straight into Nathan's eyes with genuine kindness. "Thank you for coming all this way to pick me up." Nathan was caught off guard by her warmth. "Good evening, ma'am. Please, let me help you with your coat." "Oh, thank you, but I can manage," Martha replied gently as she sat down. She noticed a bottle of water sitting in the cup holder and looked at Nathan in the rearview mirror. "You must be tired from driving all around the city tonight. Have you had anything to drink?" Nathan felt a warm sensation in his chest. In just one evening, 3 women had shown him exactly who they were when they thought nobody important was watching. The contrast was clear, and his heart already knew the answer. Over the next few weeks, the test continued during busy workdays, long business trips, and late-night airport pickups. Nathan stayed in his simple white driver's uniform, quietly observing the 3 women whenever he was asked to drive them to executive meetings across the city. Alice showed her true heart during an important afternoon trip to the airport. She was traveling to meet high-profile investors, and traffic was heavy. Sitting in the back seat, she kicked Nathan's chair repeatedly whenever the car slowed down. "Drive faster," she shouted, her voice filled with anger. "If I miss this flight, I will make sure Madame Grace fires you before the sun goes down." When a young traffic officer stopped the car to check documents, Alice rolled down her window and barked insults at the guard, treating him like dirt. Nathan watched her in the mirror, seeing a woman who used fear and cruel words to get her way. Ruth took a very different path, using subtle manipulation to win people over. During a drive to a major hotel for a conference, she spoke smoothly to senior managers on her phone, taking credit for work her team had done. But the moment the call ended, her sweet tone vanished. When Nathan politely offered to adjust the temperature for her, she scoffed. "Just focus on the road and stop trying to chat with me," she said coldly. Drivers are supposed to be seen, not heard. Ruth was polite only when someone had power or money, but cold and dismissive to anyone she thought was beneath her. Then there was Martha. One rainy evening, Nathan was sent to pick her up after a long, exhausting trade meeting. She was tired, but when she entered the car, she smiled gently at him. "You look tired too, Nathan," she said softly. "It has been a very long day for both of us." On the way back, they saw an elderly security guard standing in the heavy rain at the company gate. Without hesitation, Martha asked Nathan to stop the car. She rolled down her window and handed her own umbrella and a warm box of food to the old man, telling him to stay safe. Nathan watched her simple act of care, feeling a deep respect grow inside him. Martha did not know that Nathan was the billionaire heir, nor did she know anyone was testing her. She was simply kind because her heart was good. As Nathan pulled into the estate that night, he knew the journey had served its purpose. The long trips and busy workdays had removed every mask, showing him exactly who these women were when they thought no one important was watching. As the weeks passed, a quiet routine formed during the daily rides to and from the office. While Alice and Ruth continued to live in their own worlds, Martha's gentle presence stood out more and more with every passing day. Alice never once looked at Nathan when she got into the car. To her, he was just a tool to get from one place to another, no different from the tires on the wheels. She would sit in the back, loudly complaining about her busy schedule or barking orders into her phone. If Nathan ever had to ask for directions or clarify a stop, she would let out an annoyed sigh and snap at him for interrupting her thoughts. Ruth was no better. She was always focused on her phone, typing fast messages and planning her next move to get ahead at work. On the rare times she did speak to Nathan, it was only to give harsh instructions. "Drive faster," "Stop here," or "Don't touch my bags." She never looked him in the eye, and she certainly never bothered to ask how his day was going. Martha was completely different. From the very first day, she made a point to remember his name. Every single morning when she opened the car door, She would greet him with a warm smile and a kind voice. "Good morning, Nathan," she would say, looking directly at him. "I hope you slept well." It was not just simple politeness. It was genuine care. On hot afternoons, Martha would buy 2 cold bottles of juice from a street vendor and hand one to Nathan before sitting down. When she noticed him rubbing his eyes after a long drive across the city, she would softly insist that he take a short break to rest before continuing. One evening, after a very long and stressful day at the office, Martha sat in the back seat reviewing some documents. Instead of ignoring Nathan, she noticed the tired slump in his shoulders. "Nathan," she said gently, leaning forward slightly, "you work so hard for this company, driving all of us around day and night. Please make sure you are taking care of yourself too." Nathan looked at her in the rearview mirror, deeply moved by her words. "Thank you, Miss Martha. Most people don't even notice the driver." Martha smiled, her eyes kind and sincere. "A title or a job does not define a person's worth, Nathan. We are all human beings, and everyone deserves respect. Never forget that." Hearing those words made Nathan's heart swell with respect and affection. While Alice and Ruth saw only a low-level worker in a plain uniform, Martha saw a human being worth treating with dignity. Nathan knew right then that the test was over. He had found the woman with the heart of gold he and his mother were searching for. The heavy rain outside made the Grand Hotel lobby extra crowded, as executives and managers gathered for an evening corporate gala. Nathan stood quietly near the entrance holding a small umbrella and waiting to collect bags, dressed in his damp driver's jacket. While carrying several heavy files for the group, his foot caught the edge of a wet floor mat. Nathan stumbled, dropping the files and brushing against a wealthy visiting client's expensive coat. Alice immediately stepped forward, her face twisted in utter embarrassment and disgust. "Look at what you have done, you clumsy fool," she shouted, her voice echoing off the high marble ceiling so everyone could hear. "Do you have any idea how much that jacket costs? You are an absolute disgrace to this company. Madam Grace should fire you right this second for ruining such an important night." Ruth quickly joined in, shaking her head with a fake smile to please the angry client. "I am so sorry about him," Ruth said smoothly to the visitor, completely ignoring Nathan as he knelt on the cold floor to gather the scattered papers. "Some people simply do not belong in high-class places. He is just a driver who cannot even walk properly without causing trouble." Neither of them offered to help. Instead, they stood over him, laughing nervously and pointing out his mistake to the surrounding crowd to make themselves look superior. Nathan kept his head down, taking the harsh words in silence, feeling the painful weight of public humiliation. Suddenly, Martha pushed her way through the gathering crowd. Without a second thought for her expensive evening dress, she dropped to her knees right beside Nathan on the wet floor. She began picking up the papers, carefully drying them with her own clean handkerchief. "That is enough," Martha said, standing up and turning to face Alice and Ruth with firm, calm courage. Her voice was quiet, but it carried an undeniable strength that made the room fall silent. "He made a simple mistake on a slippery floor while working hard for all of us. Having a high position in a company does not give you the right to humiliate another human being." Alice sneered, crossing her arms. "Why are you defending a lowly driver, Martha? You are making a fool of yourself in front of important people." "Respect has no uniform," Martha replied steadily, looking straight into Alice's eyes. "A person's job does not lessen their dignity. Nathan works hard every day, and he deserves to be treated with kindness, not cruelty." She then turned back to Nathan, giving him a gentle, reassuring smile as she handed him the gathered files. "Are you all right, Nathan? Don't worry about them." Nathan looked at her, deeply moved. She had stood up against 2 powerful managers and risked her own reputation to defend a simple driver, expecting nothing in return. In that moment of shame, Martha's goodness shone brighter than ever, proving beyond any doubt the true beauty of her heart. In the days following the incident at the gala, a quiet warmth grew between Nathan and Martha. The car, once just a vehicle for a secret experiment, became a safe space for honest conversations. As Nathan drove Martha across the city for work, the simple rides turned into moments of true connection, and the original test began to fade into something much deeper. Instead of sitting in silence or working on her phone, Martha often sat near the front or spoke to Nathan with gentle warmth. She shared stories about her life, talking about how she grew up in a modest home and worked night shifts to pay for her education. She spoke fondly of her family and her belief that true success was measured by how much love and help a person gave to others. Nathan found himself opening up to her as well. Without revealing his true name or wealth, he shared his real thoughts and values. He spoke about his love for hard work, his deep respect for his mother, and his dream of finding someone who valued honesty and kindness above all else. Martha listened carefully to every word, agreeing with his thoughts and offering her own wise perspectives. During long evening journeys stuck in traffic, they laughed together over simple jokes and shared their favorite memories. For the first time in his life, Nathan felt completely understood by a woman who knew nothing about his bank account or his family empire. She was not trying to impress a billionaire heir. She was simply enjoying the company of a man she respected. One rainy evening, while waiting in the car outside a quiet office park, Martha handed Nathan a warm cup of tea she had bought. As their fingers brushed against each other, Nathan looked up and caught her eye in the mirror. Martha blushed softly and looked away with a shy smile. In that quiet moment, Nathan realized that his heart was no longer testing her. He was falling deeply in love with her. For Martha, her feelings were growing too. She did not care that Nathan wore a plain driver's uniform or drove an old car. She saw his sharp mind, his calm dignity, and the gentle way he cared for people. She was falling for the driver, completely unaware that the humble man behind the wheel was the very heir to the company she worked for. As Nathan drove her home that night, he felt a mix of immense joy and quiet nervousness. He knew that the time for secrets was drawing to an end. He had found the rare, genuine love he had been searching for, and now he had to prepare for the moment he would reveal his true identity. With the rumor spreading that Madame Grace would soon choose a partner for her son, the tension inside the company office reached a boiling point. Alice and Ruth could no longer hide their desperation. Every morning became a high-stakes competition to win Madame Grace's favor, and their polite masks began to crack under the pressure. Alice was the first to make her move. She started arriving at the office earlier than usual, wearing expensive clothes and carrying fresh flowers to leave on Madame Grace's desk. Whenever she had a chance to speak to the chairwoman, she spent the entire time praising herself and subtly putting others down. She talked endlessly about her high social connections, her rich family background, and how easily she could elevate the Fiery family name. But behind her bright smiles, her true motives were clear. She did not care about Nathan as a person. She wanted the prestige, the title, and the luxury that came with being a billionaire's wife. Ruth took a more sneaky approach. Seeing Alice try to overpower everyone, Ruth began spreading quiet rumors around the office to make Alice look incompetent. During executive meetings, she constantly interrupted Alice, pointing out minor mistakes in her department reports with a fake, worried tone. "I am only pointing this out because I care about the company's future, Madame Grace," Ruth would say smoothly, batting her eyelashes. But when she was away from Madame Grace's office, her sweet personality vanished instantly. She barked orders at her junior staff, snapped at the secretaries, and threatened to fire anyone who stood in her way. The jealousy between the two women spilled over into a heated argument in the hallway one afternoon. Believing they were alone, Alice blocked Ruth near the elevator. "Do you really think a small-town accountant like you has a chance with Nathan?" Alice sneered, her voice full of spite. "He needs a woman of class and status, not a gold digger who pretends to be nice." Ruth laughed coldly, leaning in close. At least I know how to handle business, Alice. You are just a loud, empty shell who spends all her money on designer bags. Madame Grace is too smart to pick a spoiled woman like you for her only son." Unbeknownst to them, Nathan was standing just around the corner in his driver's uniform, holding a stack of delivery boxes. He heard every cruel word, every selfish wish, and every calculating thought. Their hunger for power and wealth had completely blinded them, exposing the ugly truth behind their polished appearances. Meanwhile, Martha remained completely distant from the drama. She focused entirely on her work, treating her co-workers with the same quiet respect she always showed. While Alice and Ruth fought like enemies over a man they had never truly met, Martha was in the quiet car park, leaving a small note and a warm lunchbox on the driver's seat for Nathan, simply wanting to make sure he ate well during his long shift. The contrast could not have been clearer, and the final breaking point was fast approaching. The long-awaited news finally arrived on a crisp Friday morning. Gold-embossed invitations were personally delivered to the desks of Alice, Ruth, and Martha. Madame Grace Fiery was hosting an exclusive, grand gala at the city's most luxurious hotel. The letter clearly stated the purpose of the evening: the official return of her only son, Nathan, who would be introduced as the future chairman of the empire and would announce the woman he wished to marry. Anticipation reached its peak across the entire company. Excitement and nervous energy filled the air, but no one felt the pressure more than Alice and Ruth. Both women believed that their time to shine had finally come. Alice spent the entire afternoon at the finest boutique in the city, selecting a breathtaking glittering dress, expensive diamond jewelry, and high-heeled shoes. She walked around her department with her head held high, boasting to anyone who would listen that the grand party was practically held in her honor. She was convinced that once Nathan saw her elegance and high social status, he would instantly fall in love with her. In her mind, she was already the future lady of the Fiery estate. Ruth was equally confident, though she kept her preparations more secretive. She hired top stylists to perfect her look, choosing a sleek, elegant gown that made her appear powerful and sophisticated. She spent hours practicing her sweetest smiles and rehearsing charming answers to any question Madame Grace or her son might ask. She truly believed that her cleverness and sharp mind had placed her miles ahead of the competition. Martha, on the other hand, felt a quiet mix of gratitude and anxiety. She had not sought out this invitation, nor had she tried to compete for the heir's attention. She picked out a simple, beautiful dress she already owned and spent her evening helping her team finish their weekly work before leaving the office. While the other two women dreamed of wealth, luxury cars, and high social titles, Martha simply hoped the evening would pass peacefully without any conflict. Her thoughts kept wandering back to Nathan, the humble driver who had captured her heart with his kindness and soft laughter. She wished he could be by her side at the event instead of the mysterious billionaire heir she had never met. As evening fell, the city lights sparkled brightly against the dark sky. The luxurious hotel ballroom was filled with soft music, grand flower displays, and high society guests waiting eagerly for the big reveal. Alice and Ruth arrived early, strutting across the shining floors like queens, eyeing each other with sharp jealousy as they waited near the main stage. Martha arrived quietly, taking a seat near the back of the room with a gentle smile. Outside the venue, Nathan stood in a private dressing room, stepping out of his worn driver's uniform for the very last time. He adjusted the bow tie of his tailored tuxedo and looked at his reflection in the mirror. The simple driver was gone, and the billionaire heir was ready to walk into the light. The wait was over, and the truth was about to be revealed to everyone. The grand ballroom grew completely silent as the heavy double doors swung open. Madame Grace Fiery walked onto the elevated stage, her face glowing with immense pride. She held a microphone, looking out over the crowd of excited guests, well-dressed executives, and wide-eyed workers. "Welcome, everyone," Madame Grace announced, her strong voice echoing across the room. "Tonight is a very special night for our family and our company. For many years, you have known me as the chairwoman. But tonight, I am stepping down to hand the key of this empire to my only son, who has returned to lead us into the future. The audience clapped loudly. Standing near the front, Alice adjusted her glittering red dress and held her breath, her eyes fixed on the entrance. Ruth stood beside her. A practiced, dazzling smile spread across her face. Both women were ready to jump forward to greet the young billionaire the moment he stepped into the light. Near the back, Martha clapped politely, her heart feeling heavy as she thought about Nathan, hoping he was not working too hard out in the cold night. A tall man stepped onto the stage wearing a sharp, custom-tailored black tuxedo. He carried himself with natural dignity and power. As he stepped under the bright chandelier lights, a collective gasp rippled through the entire ballroom. Alice's jaw dropped in absolute shock. Ruth's sweet smile froze, turning into a look of sheer horror. Standing on stage, looking handsome and commanding, was the very man they had spent weeks ignoring, insulting, and mocking. It was Nathan, the driver. Nathan took the microphone from his mother and looked calmly across the room. His gaze passed over Alice and Ruth, who were now trembling with fear and embarrassment, before resting gently on Martha sitting in the back row. "Good evening, everyone," Nathan said, his voice deep, clear, and confident. "Many of you in this room know me as the humble driver who picked you up at your gates, carried your bags, and drove you through rain and heavy traffic. But every drive, every conversation, every harsh word, and every act of kindness was part of a single test." A quiet murmur ran through the crowd as the full truth hit everyone. "My mother and I wanted to find out who had a heart true enough to lead this company by my side," Nathan continued, his voice steady. "We wanted to see how people behave when they think no one important is watching. Wealth and status can be lost in a day, but character remains forever. I saw who treated a simple worker like dirt, and I saw who treated a driver with dignity and love." Nathan stepped off the stage and began walking slowly down the center aisle. Alice shrank back, covering her face in shame, while Ruth stared at the floor, completely ruined by her own arrogance. Passing right by them, Nathan walked straight to the back of the room and stopped right in front of Martha. Martha stared at him, her eyes wide with shock, her hands trembling slightly. "Nathan?" she whispered, barely able to find her voice. You are the chairman?" Nathan offered her a warm, tender smile and reached out his hand to her. "I am," he said softly so only she could hear, "and the man who fell in love with you while driving you home." Nathan gently took Martha's hand and led her up to the stage, right beside his mother. The room fell into a respectful hush. Martha looked at Nathan, still overwhelmed by the incredible revelation. But when she met his warm eyes, all her fear melted away. She saw the same kind, humble man who had shared hot tea with her on a rainy evening and listened to her thoughts with genuine care. Nathan held the microphone and turned to face the entire room, keeping Martha's hand safely in his. "True wealth is not measured by the money in a bank account or the cars in a garage," Nathan said, his voice ringing with absolute clarity. "True wealth is found in a good heart. When I wore a driver's uniform, 2 women saw me as a servant, somebody beneath them who did not deserve basic respect. But Martha saw a human being. She remembered my name, she showed me kindness, and she defended me when I had nothing to give her in return." Madame Grace stepped forward, a proud and happy smile gracing her face. She took Martha's other hand, joining their 3 hands together. "Martha, my dear," Madame Grace said gently, "you loved my son when you thought he was just a simple driver. You valued his character before you ever knew about his fortune. You have proven that you possess the true heart of gold this family has been searching for." With his mother's blessing, Nathan knelt down on one knee right there on the stage. He took out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a stunning, elegant diamond ring that sparkled under the grand chandeliers. "Martha," Nathan said softly, looking up into her eyes with deep love. "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife and building a future with me?" Tears of joy welled up in Martha's eyes. She smiled brightly and nodded. "Yes, Nathan, yes," she answered softly. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, cheering for the new couple. Amidst the celebration, Alice and Ruth slipped out through the back doors in deep shame, knowing their toxic arrogance had cost them everything. In the weeks that followed, the story of the undercover heir transformed the entire company. Nathan officially took over as chairman, but he made immediate changes to the work environment. He created new rules ensuring that all workers, from the executive managers to the cleaners, security guards, and drivers, were treated with dignity, fairness, and equal respect. No one was ever allowed to look down on another person because of their job uniform again. Nathan and Martha were married in a beautiful, joyful ceremony surrounded by family, friends, and grateful workers. As they stood together looking out over their bright future, they knew that their love story was built on a firm foundation that could never be broken. They had proven to the world a simple, powerful truth. True love begins where status ends. The story of Nathan and Martha is more than just a tale about a rich family or a secret test. It is an important lesson for all of us today. In a world where people often judge others by their clothes, their phone models, or their job titles, this story reminds us of what truly matters in life. Too many people in this generation focus on outward appearances. We live in a time where people try hard to look successful on social media, wearing bright outfits and pretending to be better than everyone else, just like Alice and Ruth did. But placing your value on high status or money makes your heart cold. When you only treat people well because they are rich or famous, you are showing that your kindness is fake. Real character is not about how you act in front of a boss or a judge. It is about how you treat a cleaner, a driver, or a stranger who can do nothing for you in return. Respect should never depend on a person's uniform or bank account. Every worker, whether they are sweeping the street, driving a bus, or running a large company, works hard to make a living. They all deserve to be treated with dignity and simple human kindness. When you look down on someone because of their job, you are not showing that you are superior. You are only showing that you lack basic respect and wisdom. Another big lesson from this story is that true love cannot be bought. You cannot find genuine happiness by chasing after money or trying to marry someone just for their wealth. Wealth can come and go in a single day, but a person's character stays forever. Martha did not fall in love with a wealthy estate or a big title. She fell in love with a kind, honest man who treated her well. Because her heart was pure, she found a deep, meaningful love that money could never buy. As you go through your own life, remember to look beyond the surface. Do not let money, status, or pride blind you to what is really important. Choose to be kind to everyone you meet, no matter who they are or what job they do. Treat the people around you with dignity. Stay humble in everything you do, and remember that true greatness is always found in a good heart.